Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cope Life Podcast. I'm Dr. Charleston Gaines. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for joining me, whether you're watching this live or watching the replay, or maybe you're just listening to this wherever you listen to podcasts. I appreciate you. I'm excited about you joining me and supporting me on this journey to get everyone, each and every one of us, to live a Cope Life, a life of kindness, optimism, positivity, and empathy. And today's topic is a very important topic. We're going to talk about ACEs and toxic masculinity. And so, if you're not familiar with the term ACEs, I'm talking about adverse childhood experiences. And I want to dig into how adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, contribute to toxic masculinity. And I think it's very important because really, there's never a point in time where our children don't matter. When we're talking about ACEs, there's a specific form called the ACE questionnaire, and it is a form that's given to people to really measure the quantity of adverse childhood experiences they've endured. And I've done a lot of research on this. In fact, my doctoral dissertation was focused on ACEs. And so, what I wanted to do before I really jumped into the topic and began to give my take on it, I wanted to talk about the ACE questionnaire, give my opinion on that, as well as some other topics we should talk about that are not actually on the questionnaire. So, the ACE questionnaire has 10 questions, and the way it works is you answer yes or no to each of the questions, and however many yeses you give, that's your ACE score. And research has shown that the tipping point in the ACE questionnaire is 4, meaning that if you've had 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, then you are more likely to develop PTSD as an adult if you experience trauma as an adult. And so I'm going to just go over the questions real quick so that you understand what I'm talking about when I say the ACE questionnaire. And then I'm going to dig into some other ACEs, some other experiences that are not even on the questionnaire. So the first question is, did a parent or other adult swear at you, insult you, put you down, humiliate you, or act in a way that made you feel afraid that you might be hurt? So again, the first question is basically, did you have an adult or a parent who was emotionally abusive to you and made you afraid of possible physical injury? The second question is, did a parent or other adults push, grab, slap, throw something at you, or hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? So the second question is about physical abuse. So the first question is about mental or emotional abuse. The second question is about physical abuse. The third question, did an adult or a person at least 5 years older than you touch or fondle you, or have you touched their body in a sexual way, or attempt to, or actually have some form of oral or anal or regular intercourse with you? And so the third question is, were you sexually abused as a child? And this specifically states prior to your 18th birthday. The fourth one is, did you often feel that no one in your family loved you or that you were important? The fifth one, did you feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or that your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you? The sixth one is, did you lose a biological parent through divorce, abandonment, or some other reason? The seventh one says, was your mother or stepmother often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or something thrown at her? This one is really saying, did your father or a man in the household physically abuse your mom or stepmother? And number 8, was there someone in the household who had an alcohol or drug use problem? Number 9, was someone in the household depressed or mentally ill or attempt suicide? And number 10 is, did a household member go to prison? So those are the 10 questions on the adverse childhood experiences questionnaire. And then for everyone that you answered yes, that would be your ACE score. But there are a lot of things in here that are not, I mean, there are a lot of things that happen in life that are not on the ACE questionnaire, such as essentially, did you grow up in poverty? And so question 5 says, did you have enough to eat? Did you have to wear dirty clothes? Had no one to protect you? But growing up in poverty is just more than those specific examples. It also has to do with the quality of your school, of your neighborhood, the amount of things that you were exposed to. For example, the ACE questionnaire doesn't talk about your exposure to violence in the neighborhood, your exposure to violence in the schools where maybe you felt threatened, maybe you felt your life was in danger. It doesn't talk about, the ACE questionnaire does not speak at all about a man being abused. Was your father or stepfather abused? And when it talks about domestic violence, it doesn't say anything about mental or emotional abuse of a parent or an adult living in the household. And I say that because you can have a very low score on the ACE questionnaire, yet you still experience a lot of hardships and you still had a very difficult childhood. In addition to that, there are things that maybe impacted you in a way that cannot or have not been measured that you're still dealing with, that maybe you feel like other people have gotten over. For example, events in your life where people made you feel like you weren't good enough, teacher calling you stupid. Um, if you're overweight as a child and you had a physical education teacher making fun of overweight kids, and you're one of them, you had to bear the brunt of those attacks, of that bullying. Those things happen. They're not in the ACE questionnaire, but they contribute to a very difficult childhood. And that's very important because these negative events that happen in childhood impact the individual across the lifespan. And so, what I was going to get into today was toxic masculinity, because I want you to understand how the two actually are related. When I'm talking about toxic masculinity, there's a couple things I want people to understand. Using the term toxic masculinity does not mean that masculinity is toxic. Masculinity is a thing. There's masculine energy that all people have and exhibit. There are certain characteristics that we will say are more masculine in nature. And then there's the idea of being a masculine man, and what does that mean? And that's not toxic. If a man thinks that it is masculine to provide for his family and so he does that, that's not toxic masculinity. So that's not what we're talking about. If a man says, as a man, I have to protect my family, I have to protect my wife and kids and provide for them, that's not toxic masculinity. That's not what I'm talking about. Toxic masculinity is more of where the idea of masculinity leads to negative behaviors that are detrimental to the person as well as whoever they are impacting or dealing with. For example, toxic masculinity could be something that negatively impacts that man and nobody else. Nobody else sees it. Nobody sees that man saying, I'm not good enough. If I was a real man, I would have a better job. If I was a real man, I would be able to lose weight easier. If I was a real man, I'd be able to hook up with some women. I'd be able to get some on the weekend. I wouldn't have to be out here and be single. And so, toxic masculinity can also include using our stereotypes of what a man is to judge ourselves as being less than a real man. And so much of that can come from a troubled childhood. If you grew up in a home where you were constantly told that you're not man enough, you're constantly told a real man wouldn't do that, or maybe at school you go to a smaller school where there's older kids, so there's juniors and seniors telling you at the age of 13 or 14 that you should have had sex by now, that you should be taller, that you should be stronger. How come you can't do more push-ups during PT? Are you a real man? Why are you so weak? And then maybe something's happening at home, right? Back to the adverse childhood experiences. Something is happening at home that is impacting you emotionally, that causes you to cry. You're 11, 12 years old, and you have a situation where maybe you lost an immediate relative due to incarceration, maybe due to a fatal accident. It could be anything, a drug overdose. It could be anything, and you're emotional about that. But you're 12 years old and you're trying to reconcile, should I cry over the loss of my father or my cousin? Or should I man up because real men don't cry? And if that becomes embedded in your personality when you're 12, 13 years old, you're going to take that with you into adulthood. And so then you get into situations where you feel like you're less of a man if you express your emotions. And then you get into these relationships, maybe with a significant other, maybe you get married. And for so many years, you were holding on to that. For so many years, you were saying, I'm not going to express my emotions. Real men don't cry. And so you don't even set boundaries. You say, well, I'm tough. I can handle it. I should be able to deal with it when she treats me like this. I should be able to deal with it when I suffer this loss. I'm a man and I should have a job that pays well to protect my family. I can't let nobody punk me. I can't let nobody disrespect me. And you have these attitudes that are brought over from childhood because when you were a young child, a young man, a young boy, you thought to yourself, when I'm a grown man, I'm going to provide for my family. You're going to say that because maybe your father couldn't provide for you. Maybe your father was in and out of jail. Maybe your father was an addict or something like that. And in those situations, the truth is, most kids don't even know what their parents went through growing up. So you might have a parent who's dealing with alcohol use disorders, and that parent dealt with abuse as a child as well. And so what happens is you carry that with you into adulthood with the idea that I can't show my emotions, I can't communicate. I have to be strong, I have to man up, I have to provide. I can't let them see me cry. I can't let them know that I'm hurting. But if you don't let anyone know that you're hurting and you hold it all inside, you're unable to heal from that. You have to fully feel your emotions to heal your emotions. And so much of our pain is so burdensome that we actually want someone to bear that burden with us. And you just can't help. You can't help yourself the way that you need to sometimes. So you need someone there for you. But if asking for help makes you less than a man, then you're not going to ask for help. And that is part of toxic masculinity. It's the idea that everything I do, I judge myself on whether or not I'm being a real man. And so as you suppress those emotions, you become so good at it that you find that you have a hard time celebrating. So maybe as your children grow up, you think to yourself, I should be more excited about my baby girl graduating kindergarten, my son playing sports, my daughter on the tennis team, my son playing golf, all of my kids winning spelling bees. I should be so excited, but I'm not. Why am I not excited? Quite often, the reason is because you've suppressed what you call negative emotions so bad that you're unable to express the positive emotions. You're unable to truly experience joy because you shut your emotions down. And that's a part of toxic masculinity. That's a part of saying a real man wouldn't do that. And so you need to step away from that. You need to understand that if you're dealing with adverse childhood experiences that you have not healed from, they are going to negatively impact the way that you see yourself and the world and your future as you move through adulthood. And this applies to everybody, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 70 years old. There are grown men in their 60s or 70s who feel guilt about how they raise their children, and they're making up for it by spoiling their grandchildren. But what you want to do is not begin to live life for real from your heart at the age of 70. You want to start today. You want to begin today. And the way that you do that is you go back and you look at what you've experienced and if you've healed from it. You look at the times where maybe your emotions in the moment may seem like they don't truly match what's going on in your life. Something happens. Maybe your your wife or your kids or your daughter, girlfriend, they do something and you overreact and you get angrier than you should have. And so you reevaluate later and you ask yourself, why was I so angry? You have to dig deep. You have to think deeply about it. And maybe the answer is because that's what you saw growing up. Maybe because that's all you've been shown, that's all you know. And maybe it's because there's a desire to have more control. Maybe you saw your father hurting and you said, I'm never going to be hurt like my father. And so I'm going to man up. And so you can go back to what happened to you during childhood and you can put in effort to heal from that. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. One way, of course, is to see a therapist, go get counseling, get professional help. But there's other things that you can do every day to really reset your mind and begin to heal, whether it's mindfulness meditation, daily gratitude practice, moving your body in some way, tai chi, yoga, working out, finding something that you love to do, painting, playing an instrument, watching movies, comedies, laughing a lot. And pay attention to how that makes you feel in your body. And then don't be afraid to ask for help. When you need a hug, as a man, you deserve a hug. It doesn't matter that maybe some people think that men don't need that, men shouldn't do that, because they're not living your life. When your kids want a hug, you give them a hug. When your significant other wants a hug, you give her a hug. So as a man, when you want a hug, ask for a hug. It's those things, those aspects of self care that we often miss as men because all of these decisions about our emotions and the quality of our lives, we act like have to align with some external definition of what it means to be a man. But that's just not the case. Quite often, when we talk about toxic masculinity, we have to understand that toxic masculinity isn't all about other people. Toxic masculinity is often the toxic ways in which we judge and view ourselves, the toxic ways that we shut our emotions down, the toxic ways that we deny ourselves help and friendships and conversations and the hugs that we need. And so, the reason I wanted to talk about this again was because I want you to understand that if you're dealing with these issues, if you're dealing with your own toxic masculinity bringing you down, now would be a good time to figure out why. You can download the ACE questionnaire. You just Google it, ACE questionnaire, fill it out. Take time to really dig into your childhood and just see what happened to you and see how it affected you, how it's impacting you today, how it is impacting the way that you relate to your children or your wife or your girlfriend. Take a look at that, dive deep, and then you can determine, is there something, a specific event or a specific thought or a specific emotion that I need to heal from? Because what really needs to happen in our lives is if we want to elevate our minds, our hearts, our spirits to the point where we are actually able to help others and live a life where we positively impact the people we love, we have to heal. As men, we have to heal. We are not above healing. When you see a man that gets shot, you don't judge him. You don't say he's not a man because he went to the emergency room. The same thing goes with your emotions. The same thing goes with dealing with trauma from your childhood. Don't hate on yourself because you recognize that there's something that you need to heal from. Go get the help. Everyone that you know and love and that loves and cares about you also wants you to heal. So go do that. Go heal, elevate your mind, your heart, and your spirit so that you can be better for yourself and for everyone who knows you, loves you, and cares about you. Heal from your childhood trauma, elevate yourself, and then you can begin to live a cope life, a life of kindness, optimism, positivity, and empathy. Thank you for joining me. I do this every Monday, the Cope Life podcast, live on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then this evening, I also decided to go live on Instagram every Monday. You can also listen to it anywhere that podcasts are available. And I just appreciate you joining me. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave those. I will respond to you. I appreciate you. Have a great Monday night.